Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Critique Revolve. I am your host, Thomas Cowley. Joined with me today, we've got Mike and Bobby in the room, and we are doing something just a little bit differently. This, you'll notice from the title, is not a direct movie or TV show review. Instead, we are talking about movie news, the industry, things we've seen, things that have bothered us that we've wanted to talk about, from cultural impacts of properties like Star Wars and Avatar and what has changed, advances in AI technology and how ChatGPT is affecting the writing and creative world, and even going to get into some conversations about creating content versus creating art. And this kind of came about because I think we've talked about this a few times in passing on pre-shows or other episodes we've done. But Mike and myself, and I know Bobby and Mike, have had long conversations about any news article that's come up, anything that we have been bothered by, anything that we wanted to talk about would result in a, on average, 30-minute or more phone call.
The three of us are the media theorists of the network.
Yeah.
Or prophets.
One or the other. Both.
You choose which word is most fitting. I would probably say prophets.
At this point, right?
Yeah.
How many times do you have to get it right before you can be up there with Nostradamus?
It's true.
I think we're outclassing him on this one.
Mike and my phone calls could be shows in their own.
Yeah.
I've always said I could just record what we do, and
I've
have
said that
content.
same thing to him, dude. I'm like, this is the pre-show. What, you were recording this, right? Come on.
We had a conversation for about an hour earlier today, and I wish we were recording.
I
a lot of good things.
It was like 33 minutes or something.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. And it was just me at the office, not really giving a fuck. I had to talk about some article that came out. And because of that, because we kept doing this, and as Bob will attest, because I've even heard it with the shows that you guys have done that I'm not a part of, the amount of things that have been called out, prophesized, said years in advance, whether it's from going all the way back to The Walking Dead, calling out streaming and the pathway that would take, the future of Star Wars when only episode 7 was out, a lot of things we've been able to call over the years. And so this year we just said, fuck it, let's just all sit in a room, turn on the actual microphones for once, and just chat about a lot of the things that have been bothering us or that we've seen and just had to talk about. Now, one of them that I wanted to start off with, because it is probably the thing that has made me the angriest to some degree, has been the rise and unfortunate lauding of ChatGPT, not just from a content creating standpoint, but what that might possibly mean. And this stemmed from an article that Mike sent me that just gave me deep depression in the middle of like a Tuesday.
More than usual.
More than usual. Usually I save that for existential Wednesdays. That's when you're halfway through the week and you're like, what have I done with my life? Why am I here?
It's better than what I do. I wrap a tight leather and I let it dry. I wet it, let it dry in the sun while it's tied around my leg with seashells.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're doing some Da Vinci Code shit?
Yep. That's what I do. Punish myself that way.
Mm-hmm.
You import seashells for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ChatGPT has become a major talking point in a lot of circles when it comes to creativity, because people have seen how it can be used to, frankly, in my opinion, do the work for them and remove creativity from the human spectrum by people being lazy in a lot of respects. And the thing that Mike sent me was that the Writers Guild of America was, up until perhaps a few days ago, originally when they were talking about the upcoming Writers Guild negotiations, were looking at ChatGPT and AI writing software as not an infringement or being allowed to some degree in the creation of scripts and storytelling, which immediately pissed me off. Because then Mike and I had a conversation, because you already have such low barrier when it comes to quality these days in the writing room. I think anybody who's seen throw a dart and hit the show.
It's interesting that you say low barrier because yes, it's a low barrier if you're in the fish pond.
If you are in the pond, you can spit and hit a fortune.
But if you're out of the pond, there's actually a very high barrier.
Quite the wall.
And that's why people like you and I and others who are writers were a little miffed that the Writers Guild was giving a thumbs up to AI. And the initial wording was, yeah, they can be a part of the guild. I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. You're going to allow writers and or AI write for you when I was not allowed entry into the guild, even though I had numerous short films that won 15 to 20 different film awards. Now, since then, they have reversed their stance on AI because of the outcry from the writers themselves in the guild saying, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, that was the thing. So when it first came out, they were looking at it akin to a writing assistant, quote, that somebody, it's no different than any other tool or person you might have help you.
Or the manatee from South Park
or the
that writes
manatee
Family
from
Guy
South
episodes.
Park. And that also bothered me because I'm saying, so you can just have any intern do your work and you can claim you're a writer? Like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
That's also bullshit.
So
in my opinion.
what's going to happen. It's going to end up being like, okay, we're doing a Friends reboot. Chandler and Joey do something funny. Chat.
Well,
write me something.
so this is what I talked to Mike about today because I hated this entire concept because I think that is a slippery slope. And I know people hate the slippery slope argument, but frankly, look at the human passage of time and it pretty much checks out. Mm-hmm. Boiling the frog is also an equivalent metaphor. The simple idea that you can put information, like you just said, Bob, into this machine and write me an episode. South Park has already done an episode about it using ChatGPT to write part of the script.
Let me be honest here. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do a whole circle of jerks written by Chat.
You're such a twat.
Because I wanted to see if it could be funnier than me.
Oh, God.
I thought about it.
Hopefully not, right?
You would hope.
You'd hope that you as a human are better than a machine.
I really thought about incorporating it to see, and there were things like for what we do that I was just like, why wouldn't I use something like this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
I'm creative enough to do it my own, but I'm also creative enough to look at somebody else's shit and then spin it into my language.
And that was my thing, is that in a world in which they already want to pay bottom dollar for the lowest quality effort, and content is taking prevalence over art, how long is it until a producer says, yeah, throw in 10 ideas into this script ChatGPT generator, and then it punches out a full script, and then you just have some low-level person who you don't have to pay nearly as much as far as the guild's concerned or as far as wages are concerned to punch up and make the nuances, what little exist in today's age, into this existing body of work.
See, now
it's probably already being done.
Yeah, we've seen She-Hulk.
There are benefits to this that I'm not against. Like if you want to use it as a research assistant to verify certain
Isn't
elements.
that just Google?
I would have been so much smarter in college.
Probably. So there's definitely benefits to this. However, there needs to be some rules. And I hate rules, but there does need to be some regulations set in place when it comes to the creative side of using this type of AI. And because of that we're going to be, for the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to be in this state of flux of trying to figure out what's permitted and what's not. Because you can I tried it the other day. You can tell ChatGPT to write a screenplay in the vein of blah, blah, blah. Plug in your favorite director. How is that not a form of plagiarism when you're literally ripping in an algorithmic fashion? You're learning from Tarantino, you're learning from Lars Van Trier, you're learning from Spielberg in a way that a person cannot.
That's exactly what it is.
And then putting together a script that feels like them. That's where you get into that gray area of, yes, technically by definition, it is not plagiarism. But that's why I say we have to figure out
if
the
I took
parameters.
the ring off and she didn't know, did I cheat? Okay, morally you're still fucking doing the wrong thing.
If I wore a condom, did I cheat? That's even a better question. And slightly philosophical.
Who is the first person that they're going to finally hack and see what people put in that gets exposed?
Oh, Jesus. I never thought about that.
Because
who did this, Picard season 1?
Because it keeps records of
Shake
everything
that.
you put in there. Because you have to sign in with
Yeah.
like your Google or whatever. So it's there. It's gonna happen.
It's absolutely going to happen, and that's the other thing that I was talking to Mike about earlier today was because look at it this way. The way I saw it is, if you're the A+ student who works really hard in school to get a 90, 95, 100% in your class, and then you have the C- D average student who's getting 69, 70s.
What are you looking at me
And
like
then-
I'm fucking Ryan?
and-
69.
No, just talking to you directly. That's
I
why.
know. I'm joking.
And then you have the teacher say, well, you know what? To bring up the class average, to make it easier on you, we're going to add 20 points to everyone's score. The chat GPT in this metaphor, we're going to make it easier. Well, as the A+ student who's worked really fucking hard, that doesn't affect you. And you're like, well, how is this fair? I've put in this effort to be at this level. Meanwhile, the C- D student is going to be like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm all about that.
Well,
they are going to, allowing this stuff is going to only, to me, allow continuous low quality work to further permeate and drown out what good effort content is out there.
Well, let's plug this in practically now into the film equation here. Taking that same thought, Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is a job in Hollywood called script doctor.
Right.
You punch up scripts.
Right.
And when I did my test and I told Chat GPT to write a script for me, it said it can write a script for me, a complete feature film script, just punch in some details, and I'll do that for you. However, you need to know that I am not a blah, blah, blah Hollywood screenwriter, and you may need to get approval and oversight on the nuances of a script. So what I take from that, now this, of course, is the original version. It's going to get better in the next 3 or 4 years.
Or months.
What you're doing, what a studio is going to do easily, or some douchey producer that does not want to spend money on optioning a script, he will punch in a generic idea and say, write me a script on 3 dudes, a car, and some money, and a chick. And
Fast and the Furious 50.
yeah, there you go. And then he's going to hire a script doctor for a fraction of the money and have him just punch it up and fix it. Give it the nuance that a screenplay needs. So these studios will be using this in order to eliminate an actual creative job.
Well, also,
you-
how
you
much
know-
more does that put any pitch meeting at risk of your ideas just being turned into
you don't
a
need a
chat
pitch
GPT?
meeting.
You just got to have that initial idea. I have an idea.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Anybody who has those ideas that wants to get into the industry that shares them with an unscrupulous person, you throw that into chat GPT, you're
Right.
done.
Chat GPT could have saved Justice League after they fired Snyder.
Well, that I honestly probably would have believed. But
Like, let's look at the good about this. let's look at all the shitty movies that we've had that have disappointed us. That were just like, yo, like a bot could have wrote this better.
But that's where you get into like the philosophical aspect, because yeah, maybe a bot. Well, let's say ChatGPT is better than all these other crap shows that are coming out. I rather have crap shows done by people than something C+ worthy by a robot.
You say that, but then we deal with everybody that wants to like all the lore and everything included in it. And if you don't go by the reference material, that it's horrible.
That's me.
But you have to remember,
And now
though,
it's like, oh, well, maybe if I put all these things in there, it's like I need references from this, and this.
Yes, I
So,
still don't like it.
you have to remember how generative AI and AI in general operates. So yes, you bring up a good point, Bob, and I would tend to agree that possibly an AI could write a better movie than, say, the last
The script from Hellboy.
Fast and the Furious or Hellboy picture. But these AI are still being programmed by human beings, and the algorithms that are in place are biased to the people that are programming them. So they're still pulling from the intelligence of the people programming
Yeah,
them.
and that's basically been the last 9 Marvel films.
So there is a catch-22 there. Like, it's still being generated based on the programmers themselves. This isn't AI that has consciousness and creates complete
It's not-
creativity from
Yeah.
nowhere.
It's not Cortana or anything like from an actual sci-fi
Right.
property.
This
You're
isn't
not,
alive.
You're not talking about the Windows search.
No. Now, the good thing is, since that news was first coming out, the Writers Guild has taken a definitive stance, it seems, and is against it, saying, of course, because Twitter's where all our PR goes to die, the WGA's proposal to regulate the use of materials produced using artificial intelligence or similar technologies ensures the companies can't use AI to undermine writers' working standards, including compensation, residuals, separated rights, and credits.
What's the first movie that's going to say written and directed by ChatGPT?
South Park literally has an episode in which Trey Parker took the ChatGPT, and the credits say written by Trey Parker and ChatGPT.
Of course.
And you can easily tell where he did it because he sets it up in the story. It's all about the kids using it.
Yeah.
But it's like, fuck, man, that is goddamn depressing.
Yeah.
And I think it gets more into why it bothers me on such a deeper level is because we're seeing more and more content rather than art. Art is being turned into content. Storylines, IPs, anything creative is simply content.
Well, yeah,
now.
because if you magically can write a script and then it could give me character models because you can go to the other one.
And you can use the virtual projection instead of doing any kind of lighting.
Yeah.
And proper set.
And I think that's
cinematography.
where the philosophical aspects come into play, like posing those questions, because technically, if you're working in any mainstream medium, every art form is a commodity. It is. It's a cultural commodity. It's an economic commodity, and it's designed to make money. But the difference is having an AI that's simply there to generate content as opposed to a schlub who at least has some soul and possibly a pushback because he's like, well, I'm also an artist and I'm going to push back on studio exec A that just wants me to do A, B, and C because I have my own integrity here. With a chat AI, you're not going to have that integrity. You're just going to have something that pushes out content. So we have bad content now. As we know, we complain a lot lately about our poor content, but will the AI do any better?
And that's the thing. I don't think the AI is going to do anything better. And I get kind of annoyed because to me, and maybe this is, me being
because at least with the human, we have that pushback.
Yeah.
We have a semblance of integrity.
But also, like,
you don't think they have integrity?
An AI, no.
If you program it.
Write me a joke about death. I'm sorry, but I cannot fulfill this request. It would be inappropriate.
That's a moral. That's a moral. That's a moral or ethical stopper boundary. That.
But also, right there, who decides the morals for that ChatGPT?
The people
bot?
that I said earlier, the people who are programming it, their
Right.
biases is what governs those ethical parameters.
Right. And is that no different than people being upset that religion governs so much of our life by their moral standards?
Right.
So we know anything controversial will never have come from this because they're afraid to take a stand.
So, and then we get more into content.
I like how
art.
Bobby goes for the civil rights aspect. He's all, it refuses to take a stand.
I am a black lesbian, like Fierce Morgan says.
But also, like, I thought the whole point of AI, from everything I saw as a kid, was to make my life easier by, like, a vacuum that runs on its own so that I don't have to fucking do that shit anymore. Or little robot arms that come out of the washing machine to throw your clothes into the dryer. Like, where is the cool shit with this AI programming software to do the work that we don't want to do as people? Instead, we're using it to farm out creativity?
It's, what do I say? We still have not explored the cosmos so that we can learn about us and where we originate from, our place in the universe. And we still haven't explored our last frontier here on Earth, which is the oceans. But we have 27,000 iPhones that will probably float and evaporate and project a holographic portal of the person you're speaking to within the next 3 years, but we're not using technology for the betterment of humanity. And that's why I have a problem ultimately with this AI, because all it's going to be is yet another way for studios to just make a quick buck while pushing out people who actually want to work and make money and make a living on the art itself.
Why is this AI not used to make robotic limbs function the way they should?
Technically, generative AI can also be used, it says here, for
porn.
The predominant practical application is art, design, gaming, and virtual reality, but it can also be used in fields such as medicine and chemistry, where it can generate new drug molecules or predict the effects of certain compounds on the human body.
So again, it's taken over all these creative aspects, but on the back burner is, curing major diseases and finding breakthrough scientific research.
I would like to see.
Couldn't we flip those things?
That's what I'm saying. I'd like to hear the news on that. How often are we using this AI here to do this type of stuff? That's where I'm about. Let's medical aspects and helping humans survive, that's different. But when you're intruding into and the reason why I don't want to sound like some bleeding heart artist, because that's not the problem here. It comes down to a cultural issue. What is this going to do to us as people down the road when our culture, which people all know that the way we learn about the past is through our culture, meaning the things that we create. In 100 years, will people be able to learn from us, or will they learn about AI? Do you get my point here? We're diluting.
Whitewash is going to mean something completely different.
You get into like the philosophical aspect.
We're diluting the humanity out of things, and that's what slightly bothers me about that. That's what ultimately
But don't you think
me.
that this stuff is already happening? Because why would HBO recreate what was a perfect series with Harry Potter? Because they want to eliminate anything that the author did.
Because then, for some reason, they won't have to pay royalties to the previous partner.
she her stance has been eliminated. Well, guess what? We don't have to worry about that anymore with these type of things, because it's like, what stance does AI take?
But
there's no controversy,
which is terrifying. Because then again, how we like Mike said,
that's a good point. But also in that point is a flip side, meaning yes, we are remaking things, let's say. Is that what you were trying to say?
Well, yeah. Well, because like
reiterate, I wasn't quite.
For me, like they announced HBO Max is redoing the Harry Potter in 7 seasons. Like right after you've had what is probably perfection when it comes to casting and everything else. And I only think they're
theatrical releases.
Yes, the theatrical releases, and I think they're only doing this based on the fact that there's been such controversy around.
J.K. Rowling.
Yes, I was drawing a blank there.
Okay,
so all of a sudden they take her out of it. They create this whole new thing.
Thanks for the IP.
Yes.
Now we don't need you.
We don't need
artist.
you anymore. You're gone.
Okay, so that's the point I thought you were making. But that's also a statement on us as humans. Do you get what I'm saying? So even though that's a negative in our view, it's still saying something about us as a culture. Look at what we're doing. We are trying to remove certain parts of our history, cinematically speaking, in order to accommodate a younger generation that is far more sensitive.
And yes, and I've been on this air, and I said, I don't care how many fucking fat bitches Ezra Miller throws chairs at while trespassing, as long as he does a cool Flash movie. I mean...
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
There needs to be like a separation of church and state when it comes to certain things like that.
But I think that's the thing is that, because you're right, Mike, we are trying to strip mine all the human element out of our art. But I think we're already seeing some of the ramifications of what that means. And again, people, because we're prophetic on this network, we were calling things before other people were aware of it. And I feel like this, in my soul, I know this is one of them. Is that we're already seeing how when you only go down to content that's inoffensive, you have stuff that does not last or make an impact. This idea bothered me because I was watching some of these other quote unquote critics via YouTube who I feel are more and more just, for every one good one, there's 8 commenters who aren't critics, but sure the hell like to talk about stuff. And they were talking about the sequel trilogy Star Wars movies. And why they, or even another example that they brought up, Avatar, does not quite have the cultural impact that something like the original Star Wars trilogy or Harry Potter or, even the Marvel Universe for the first 10 years it was around have had. How is it that $3 billion have been made? Everyone apparently in the world has seen Avatar, but it has had zero cultural impact.
There's no shirts. There's no toys,
merchandising,
there's no video
shirts.
games.
There's not kids who want to be a part of this. It isn't a video game.
No one's
series.
cosplaying as a Navarian, whatever they are.
Yeah. There's none of that stuff. Why is that?
Because
and this is what I said, and
Yeah,
I
go
have a
ahead.
voice recording timestamped because I took notes in the car because I was that angry. And then I called Mike about it. And the answer is not simply nostalgia. It is not simply moral lessons taught to children that are also applicable to adults. The answer is these new ideas, these new properties have no soul.
they're soulless.
There is
They're-
no
they're-
human intrinsic, true to the human experience element built into these.
They're based on properties that had a soul at one point.
Then the mouse stole them.
And others.
The
I
only
mean,
one.
Yes,
There's
and other
others.
studios, absolutely. I mean, Disney is definitely one of those people that continue to rape themselves repeatedly. Like, if you could rape yourself, I mean, Mickey Mouse knows how to do it. Because they continue, they've done this
tail.
for years. They're really the ones that originated that whole idea of continuing to release the same, set of films over and over and over every 4 or 5 years. And now they're doing the same thing with every single property, but they're just simply
Live action.
Yeah, live action. And then with
Right.
the Star Wars side and the Marvel side, they're cutting and pasting many of their film projects. Now, this is where AI could help when it comes to decision factors. And I believe, Bob, you had mentioned that. Things where they're not quite sure what to make and they don't have all of the data in front of them, so they can punch in perhaps a better programming schedule for the CW. Perhaps CW wouldn't have fallen apart if they had an AI that actually understood who their actual viewership was. So that's where AI could function, I think, in a brilliant fashion, helping studios come up with the next project to make or the next programming schedule for their network.
Or the three of us in this fucking room.
Well, we're pretty much computers when it comes to pop culture. Let's just be honest about it. I'm telling you now, I don't have faith in many of my abilities, but I think the three of us could probably walk it. If this was like 1960s and we could carry a gun like the mafia and we just walked into the studios and took over, we would probably run the fuck out of Hollywood because we know what we're doing. You take over Disney, Thomas, I take
easy.
over Warner Brothers, and you take over the rest. We would make better decisions and make everyone way more money than the fucking monkeys that are doing it now. It's because every time we say something, we are proven a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later. It's just like with the studios now backtracking on streaming. They just released a statement, I want to say 2 days ago, with the success of Mario Brothers, the mega box office smash hit that was Mario Brothers. And the headline of the article was, with Mario Brothers' success, including blah, 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 various other films that are now making money again at the theaters, they're saying that it's now causing the studios to second guess their streaming obligations and realize that the profit is in theatrical distribution and not streaming. And because of that, they're going to pull back drastically on streaming and go right back to where the money is, which is theatrical distribution. Now, every single one of us in this studio 4 years ago said this was a bad idea with streaming.
Yep.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to work. Vertical integration to that degree would never be a success.
And that they would cannibalize their own profits by the cost of running the stream rather than let Netflix have its own pie. They got greedy, wanted that pie, and then now they don't realize that there wasn't enough to go around.
And there's zero distribution deals.
There's no
Actors aren't making money. In fact, how many actors now in the last 2 months, and big wah, but how many actors in the last 2 months now have actually come out and said that we can't even make money?
I gotta sell my Malibu ranch because I can't afford taxes. Wah, wah.
But when you think about the expected income of an actor, especially a television actor, 20 years ago, you have one TV show that runs for 100 episodes and you never have to work again.
Yeah, every comedian wanted to get on TV.
Yeah, that's never going to happen now because of the way distribution is being handled on the television side. And when it comes to the theatrical side, same thing. It's really hard for certain actors to make money because oftentimes they would make back-end deals where,
Right.
okay, I'll take a cut in my salary, but I'll get a portion of the box office if we break, this amount of
DVD
dollars.
sales, residuals,
Exactly.
reruns.
But there's less windows. So, for example, actors would create backends based on windows. So windows are basically the different, if people aren't aware of what that is, basically the different avenues of distribution. So streaming is a window, VOD is a window, DVD is a window. Those have been eliminated because the fragmenting of streaming, there's one window now. It's streaming.
Would you rather have 50%?
That everybody gets for free.
And you make no money.
Would you rather have 50% of 100 or 100% of 5?
It's tough.
I know math is hard. You can ask anybody at Warner Brothers. Math is hard.
You imagine Bob at a meeting. Hard decision.
But
How big is that 5?
And I think this goes hand in hand with some of the movie releases we've seen just this year. We have Mario Brothers making on its track, as they've said, to make $1 billion.
Jesus Christ.
Its budget $100 million.
That's amazing.
We've had Creed 3 do very well. We've had fucking John Wick was going to be the last one. Spoiler alert. Now they're like, fuck, I guess we'll make 5.
And a prequel.
And a prequel. And a spinoff.
Yeah.
All at the same time. Modest budget. Creed, I said Creed 3. Cocaine Bear, fuck, like that one did well.
Tore it up at the box office.
We are having more and more of these middle tier hits making what Hollywood used to be good at their money back by doubling or tripling the investment up front. Meanwhile, you have something like Ant-Man, which costs twice the cost of the first Avengers movie, and it is hemorrhaging money like a hemophiliac in a razor blade shop.
Did it really cost twice the original?
Almost twice the original. If you count in budgeting for marketing, it is twice the original.
Did you see that the Marvel CEO, like the head of Marvel that was got fired? He got fired because he was come out saying, like, I just said their movies are getting too expensive. You know, that's why he says he got fired, but who knows? We'll talk about that on a different show.
He also told Disney that they need to stay out of politics.
Yeah.
That same guy.
Yeah.
But these are
we'll
both
talk about
things that these are both things that kind of have been proven at this point.
But I always like I think I told Mike this. Me and my dad were sitting in Florida, and I'm like, the new M. Night movie was coming out, and I was like, how is M. Night still getting movies? He makes shit. And then I looked, and I was like, wow, this thing only cost $25 million, and he made $275 million on it. Okay, good for you, sir.
And that's the thing, dude. I keep hearing all these stories like more and more making $1 billion is no longer a landmark event. It is necessity.
Well, when you have a $350 million movie
Ant-Man.
and you have to make 2.5 to 3 times the amount, and that number's
To hit
going
your
up now because
break-even
even
point.
marketing dollars are now quadrupling.
Yeah, it's because of eggs and the price of milk.
So, and housing.
But
bare
that's
minimum
insane.
of
the
life.
day you have to make $1 billion to be profitable.
Yeah.
No financial analyst on the planet is going to tell you you're doing things correctly.
I honestly thought the Joker would have changed a lot of that, and the Batman, because they were both low budget
It was economically sound.
superhero movies compared to what they actually made.
Well, I think that's what we're going to see. That's a good point. And I think that's what Thomas was getting to. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I agree with both of you, because I feel like they're going to start realizing, let's pull back on these ridiculous budgets that are just unnecessary and make these middle grade films 60, 70, 80 million.
100 million.
And really put emphasis on, cleverness and writing. And we will earn our money back. And that's what they seem to be doing. And I guarantee you, we should just say it right now on the air, because we're going to be right.
Yeah.
It's going to be announced that that's going to be these studios' focus.
They're going to have smaller budgets in theaters only.
Yep.
As they start looking at licensed content to Netflix, Hulu, and the established big names, rather than try to make Peacock work.
And lower run times.
Yes.
Yeah. These 3-hour epidemics.
So wait a second.
like-
They're going back to when movies actually worked in the 90s?
Back when I used to rent Blockbuster things, and if you go on the slow play, you can get almost 4 movies on a thing with the dual recording.
You're telling me that we're going to do what worked? This is crazy.
Honestly,
talk.
when me and Ryan went to go see Creed, and it was like, it's an hour and 40 minutes.
Dude, that's what I said to Mike with Mario. I was like, dude, it's only fucking 90 minutes.
Like,
And the film I just watched, Renfield, 90 minutes.
And you're just like, I feel complete.
Meanwhile, Elvis was almost 3 hours and only had an hour and 40 minutes of content.
Now, I'm all about large running times if it's necessary.
If it's necessary.
If it's necessary.
We are repeating, and we've had this, I'm just taking snippets from our phone calls.
Yeah.
We are repeating Hollywood's bloated days in the 50s, where Cleopatra, this $400 million megalith-sized behemoth movie, was a commercial and critical failure.
And what were they trying to do? It's the exact same thing.
Outdo each other every
They were
fucking
trying
time.
to compete with television.
Yep.
That was taking over, so they thought, well, let's make these giant, extravagant pictures. And now with the Marvel films, I'm just using them as an example because they are the thing right now when it comes to big budget films. That's what the superhero films are trying to do. They're trying to inflate their budgets, make a large splash with action and pizzazz all over the place in order to compete with a dying market or streaming or television, because we know premium content has taken over when it comes to the more creative and quality-driven content is for the most part on television. So they're saying, well, we can't compete with that, so let's just throw tons of
Let's be
money
bigger
at
and
these big
splashier.
pictures. So they're doing the exact same mistake that
they did 50, 60 years ago.
and they're learning, hopefully.
Yeah.
Unless in 50 years they'll do it again.
Well, time is cyclical, right? All events are cyclical. But that's again like where we get into content versus art. And I think, bringing up the Batman kind of makes me think about that, because the Batman was, I think anybody here would say, was pretty good for at least 2/3 of the movie. And then it kind of has this additional third.
Then you feel
Tacked
guilty
on.
about being white.
And that's when that kicks in. And I feel like this is one of those things that it's missing what gives art a soul. And I'm going to make a comparison to The Dark Knight here. Now, I know this is going to piss off people like Steve, who's talked about the Batman when we were doing the Oscar show. I don't know, Bob, your personal take on it, but I thought it was pretty good. But it's
a
not,
crowd pleaser. I mean, it's not a bad movie.
but I think it was missing just a little bit of something that I think The Dark Knight had, and that is that human relatable element. The first 2 hours are solid up until, spoilers, Falcone gets killed, right? I thought that was solid, great, fun Batman movie material. And then there's this additional part where it just kind of goes off on this white guilt, new age alt-right message that I feel like was a miss. And I feel that some of this had to do with relatable human elements, because
Alt-left or alt-right?
alt-right, sorry, has to do with some relatable human moments. For example, in the Batman, what does he fail at as a character? What does Batman fail at?
Ask Bob. He's the Batman guy.
He fails at stopping Falcone from getting killed.
Oh, you're talking about in the Batman?
Before the Riddler, yeah.
Yeah,
before
yeah.
the Riddler can do it, right?
Okay.
That's his failure point. Meanwhile, in The Dark Knight, his failure point is he doesn't save Rachel. And that costs him the love of his life. It irreparably damages Harvey Dent and changes him both physically and mentally from the person we've ever known. And the movie ends with him as, quote, the Dark Knight, running away and having to take the mantle, not that he deserves, but that the city needs. In the Batman, he fails at stopping Falcone, or stopping the Riddler from getting Falcone killed. But that's not really, to me, a failure. Like, it's somebody he didn't want to save in the first place.
I don't see it that way.
Hold on, I'm not quite done.
Okay.
You didn't stop the Riddler from killing him. Well, it was somebody you personally wanted to kill anyway, and it's not that big of a loss because you beat the Riddler and everybody goes home okay. It's this kind of safer answer, whereas the Dark Knight has this, he failed. He stops the Joker and he stops Harvey Dent from killing Gordon's kid, but he still lost. And that idea of carrying a burden that even though you tried your best, you still can lose, as Jean-Luc Picard puts so aptly in The Next Generation, you can make no mistakes and still lose, is something that he carries with him that we all can relate to. How many people are in therapy blaming themselves for something that they weren't technically responsible for? That is why that movie, I think, hits so home, not just because of Heath Ledger's performance and his death around the time, but it's something that people will watch for a very long time because I think it has a human, relatable, intrinsic moment, whereas the Batman has fun, flash, and substance to the style and being a comic book, but the failure part is like, oh, the bad guy died from the other bad guy who we didn't really care about anyway. I feel like there's that human element of relatability.
Yeah, the failure point is the fact that he was motivating the wrong people to change his city. I didn't think Falcone was the failure point. Like everybody took on the vengeance mask instead of being Batman.
All the people who were involved.
Yes, the people that were trying to take down Gotham when he was trying to save it. That's just my opinion of it, and that's a whole different type of show.
I agree with both of you guys, but that's the problem with the movie is the movie didn't know what it wanted to be. And
it has two different movies in it.
Like, I like the movie, but if we were going to nitpick it, I could definitely destroy it because my problems were with a lot of, and I don't know why we're getting into this, but we're here, so let's do it. In my view, the movie was all about the failure of institutions under the leadership of the white man and the sins of the father and how we have responsibility to fix the sins of the father. That was the theme that governed every portion of the movie. So that's how I view it. Now, I feel like that's an interesting avenue to take, and I did like seeing how Robert Pattinson played it, and I like seeing a young Bruce Wayne. We've never seen someone that young and someone who's not quite sure of himself. But ultimately, the movie, to me, didn't know what it wanted to be. Was it a Batman movie or a political thriller? You know?
Right.
And I guess it could be both.
I think it is
They
both.
were trying to do a little too much, and it had a little bit of strong, not a little bit, it had some strong notes of anti-white later in the film that just felt weird for a Batman movie. So why did we get into this?
Because the human element and art versus making content. And that's the thing is
I definitely think the Batman is not just content.
I don't think it's just
I feel
content,
like it's art.
but
I may not agree with a lot of its political messages, but I would say it's closer to art than simply content. But that's also, I think, why the movie did work for a lot of people was because it was trying to be something other than just simply. I love Snyder's movies, but Snyder's movie is more closer to content.
The Snyder Cut, or just
all of his movies in general are closer to content. Although he knows how to walk that line between artistry,
I would say he does
commercial.
a pretty good job. With the commercial aspect.
Yeah.
But my point was simply that Batman, and all of those things, while they are there, are these much higher level, harder to relate to an individual, and more of a criticism of society. Whereas what really sticks to people and what makes these movies have cultural impacts on an individual is a unique to human trait, relatable down to the individual.
I would agree with you that if your point was that Nolan's films are more human, then yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's not that I'm not saying Batman's not fun or a good movie, but I'm saying there's a reason why some things have that cultural impact. You know,
I can destroy the Batman for people if you want. It's also also very anti-Trump. I mean, the fact that he inspires the wrong people is what people said Trump did incidentally at first. That he emboldened the wrong people. So the whole movie is, I could destroy it for anyone who loves it, who doesn't want to think about politics, because I've actually gone down that rabbit hole and started to write an essay, and I got about 3 pages in, and I said, you know what? All this is going to do is piss people off, because people love the Batman.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I feel like when you're looking at content,
I think it just comes down to a discussion of how much are we going to let content replace art? Are we finally seeing the pendulum swing the other way with these mild budget movies that are actually profitable?
But at the same time, I do think the Batman was a good way to go because it was relatively low. They focused on more smaller, nuanced aspects.
And I think had they not had that like white guilt third act bit, I think it would have been a much more solid movie.
And that's where the Joker succeeds too. Is the fact that it's to me that the Joker, and I hate to say this because I don't know what it says about me. I feel like that movie is way more relatable.
Yes, I think because everyone
almost every way
because it's not about. I would say that the Joker does not hinge on this larger than life character being this comic book character. It hinges on feeling beaten down by society, the uncaring nature of everyone else, and just feeling like you've constantly lost, because everyone's had those dark moments that can, and people have had that, as the Joker's known for, that one bad day that pushes you to a breaking point. And I think the more that we have this ChatGPT, sanitized, gray, bland, inoffensive, that we can't talk about that subject because it's not allowed behavior in our movies and content, rather than the truly horrifying yet amazing Joker.
Nothing stimulates conversation.
Yeah. You're not going to have art. You just have more stuff.
Everybody that hates the Joker, I was like, you have no idea how mental health works.
Exactly. You've never had that kind of stream of bad luck or known someone who's really dealt with those kind of demons. And looking at the ugly side of human nature is what makes us human. The fact that the fact that people have reactions to how death works in completely different areas. Some people might mourn for, others would rallying cry be celebrating their death. The fact that we can laugh at terrible things and cry at terrible things. All this ugliness that makes us complicated and confusing is what makes us human. And as we try and strip mine that out and destroy it so that we have the most inoffensive, clean, and basic, royalty free, so we don't have to worry about the complicated viewpoints of the author adaptations, the more it just becomes noise.
Yeah. Okay, I see. Now you brought in the point. I get
Bringing
it.
It took me a bit. I got there, though.
I get it. Now, just to backtrack just a bit, because you brought up the Batman and the Joker, I do feel like those are good
steps.
Those are good examples of what Hollywood should continue to do, especially when it comes to certain DC properties and even smaller films that may not have worked with $200 million budgets. Like, for example, Hellboy. Why make Hellboy a $300 million movie? Make it a $50 million film. Make it small and nuanced, like the Joker, like the Batman, and you run far less risk and will probably make more money because you have to put attention into the detail.
Yeah, but then that they did do that. That was called Dread, and then it never.
You know what? I honestly think that if Dread came out today, it would have done far better
because the rated R movie and everything else is acceptable.
I also don't think people knew what to expect because that movie had positive word of mouth. I don't know a single person that shit on that movie.
Yeah. That was a cult hit way after the fact too.
Will we ever get back to the indie days?
What do you mean by the indie days?
Like the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, to where we had the Tarantinos, the Kevin Smiths, the Robert Rodriguez. Will we ever get there again?
I would say you do, but not through Hollywood. I think with the advent of the internet and the way in which distribution is controlled,
so you think
tightly,
we're going to be going the Chance the Rapper, I don't need a record label, I will put it out on my own comedy guy selling it on his own website for $5?
I think there is yet to be a way to make that super profitable, but I think the time is coming for that.
I don't think so, because every time we come up with ways to stay away from Hollywood, it's absorbed because that's what those studios do. We had an indie market until the studios saw that there's profit to be made. So they then assimilated and merged all these smaller studios. And we haven't had true indie films really since the 90s because we have tons of, small, I guess you can call them imprints or studios, but they're actually owned by Sony, by Disney, by Warner's, and I don't feel like we will ever be able to have complete indie films like the 90s because there is no room for them to enter the market.
I think there will be.
I don't think anybody's buying those things because when I did the South by Southwest when it was virtual, man, I watched so many good films that have never been freaking released.
Well, dude, we reviewed that Western that me and David did 2 years ago that was premiered at South by Southwest. We had the screener. We watched it 2 years ago. It just now got a distribution deal as of last month.
It's crazy. I mean, they're out there. It's just,
I think that
where do we see it?
I think that as they realize that the streaming is hemorrhaging money and they move back to, as we said, what works, that leaves a gap for things like the established streaming, such as Netflix. Netflix is a place I could easily see some indie pictures going and being indie darlings on that platform. Or how you can self-publish your book on Amazon for a small fee. Maybe that's where Amazon Prime gets a lot more content as other entities start moving back to
But
theaters.
marketing comes into play. If you're looking at Amazon, who's going to market it for you? Amazon isn't. It's just going to sit there. You know how many movies? I have tons of friends on Facebook that announced they just released their film. I just released my film on Amazon. It has one review.
Yeah.
It's not being seen by
it's
anybody.
not there
It's become
yet.
a place to drop. Dude, I know you're trying to be optimistic, but I don't have optimism when it comes to this because we had this chance in 2009. It was called web series. Web series was where all the indie people wanted to go because Hollywood wasn't there. The moment Hollywood saw Felicia Day make tons of money on the Guild, they said, we can do this too. And they left no room for the amateurs to produce films and get seen. Same thing happened. Let's go into the podcast realm. Same thing happened with the podcast realm. We had 25,000 times the listeners 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But because Hollywood or mainstream media has now merged with podcasting and has consumed all, even the podcast platforms are now owned by the big three broadcasters. As long as there's money to be made, there will always be the people, the studios, the radio stations looking to take it over. Bill Gates did it in the 80s and 90s. He saw someone that could be his competition, came out of some college, top of his class. I'm not going to allow him to work for anyone. I'm going to hire you, and I'm going to make you sit in this office, and you're going to work for me. He did that so he can stop competition.
Right. And I'm not saying you were wrong. What I'm saying is
We're fucked, okay?
I think if anything we've learned in the last 10 years is that history is repeating itself. We've gone through the McCarthy era. Careers ended based on what your political views are and where you're at. We're going through the bloated Cleopatra, overdone movies of the late 50s, early 60s. What comes next is the revolution with Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate. We don't know what it looks like yet, but I'm confident that something is going to come that will shake things up. Because if there is one thing that you just proved that Hollywood is good at, it's finding something and strip mining it for money.
I'll tell you what the next big thing will be. It'll be the metaverse, but not Facebook's metaverse. It'll be AI, or not AI, virtual reality. There won't be a lot of programming for it at first. Amateurs, people looking to get their foot in the door, will make content for it. It'll do very well. Hollywood will come in, push everyone out. I got things from here, small people, and they will take over that next. It's what they do.
Maybe, but I still think that with so many things getting cannibalized and ruined, that people look at their childhood and say, why are we rebooting, redoing, remaking, readapting these things?
Yeah.
And with it becoming more and more homogenized, safe, and boring, it's going to spark a drive of new creations, new ideas, new people doing literally anything different in a counterculture movement, simply to not do what their parents told them to do back in the day. Woodstock and all the hippie movement against the people in the adults of the 50s. There's gonna be something. It's human nature. Now, how that's monetized, how it's profitable, does it make money? What does it look like? I don't think those we can guess. If we did, we'd be, fucking millionaires. We're prophets. We can't see the future though. To that degree.
If anything,
but I think there's going to be something.
I hope, but just within this political landscape and how everything is so.
I didn't say anything anytime soon.
Because we do see smaller studios popping up. Daily Wire launched their own studio a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But all they're doing is fragmenting now the industry help. Conservatives work here, liberals work here.
Yeah, that's its own thing.
Yeah. So hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to content. I do, just to end, I suppose, on a high note, I do feel like the positive comes from the lower medium budget films. I feel like that's what we can count on as fans, as film enthusiasts for our content. I feel like that's where we're going to find the quality for the foreseeable future. It's going to be those smaller films, the Cocaine Bears, the Creeds,
John Wick,
Yes.
Mario for $100 million.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. Like I'm okay with even that right now. just
Yeah.
to have some quality stuff. Maybe it's not the best thing ever in the universe, but just to have it be something that I can say I enjoyed rather than, oh God, what happened here? And they can make money off of it too, then great.
Yeah. I will say because I watch a lot of movies, there have been more movies now where I don't groan when I'm watching them.
In the last, 6 months?
Yes, there does seem to be a pushback.
Mm-hmm.
Even from the liberal creators themselves, that are now pulling away from this overt political statements that are just weak at best. I hope we return to subtext.
I was going to say that. I was like, that's just what I want, is that I want movies that have something to say beyond the I'm shouting in your face with a megaphone about my viewpoint.
Right.
So
that's hard, though.
And that's it comes back to, well, maybe we'll throw it in Chat GPT. Yeah. And then
how can I subtly say fuck you?
Add subtext to my script.
Can you make the Batman? Can you remake the Batman minus the anti-white, please? Go ahead, print it up.
All right. Well, we'll see what comes.
See if he'll do that. Do you have it in front of you?
Dude,
it'll be Deadpool 3 Disney.
Oh, Jesus.
Written by Chat GPT.
Man.
All right, so that's going to do it here for this discussion. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. And again, this is an example of what our phone calls look like. So,
and please don't shit on us for our anti the Batman comments.
It's not anti the Batman. It's
kind of was.
Room for improvement.
It kind of was, Thomas. Kind of was.
Okay, B plus is still a good grade.
A little bit. A little bit.
Okay. So watch us next time as we shit on the Batman. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.